Well, hello, everyone. It's Wednesday, September 11th, 2024, and we're at the headquarters of Thomas Concrete in Atlanta. We have the pleasure of spending time with my friend and industry veteran, Bill Davis. I'm really excited to visit with Bill today because I'll finally get to the bottom of some of the stories I've heard over the years. For example, was Bill really a bull rider in his youth? I've heard these stories. I want to hear more. So, Bill, let's just jump right in, please, and tell us about you. Tell us about where you grew up and all that good stuff.
You bet. I'll get back to the bull riding story.
Yeah.
First, I'm honored and humbled to be here. Kind of being an industry legend implies that you're old. I guess I am, but my mindset is I don't think that way. I love what I do. I love coming to work every day and helping young people grow and develop and mature in the business. But back to the bull riding, yes. In 1990, we had a plant manager, Jeff Ayers, Lithia Springs. We were at the Swanee plant. The Garth Brooks video, The Dance, came on. Lane Frost is in that video, world champion bull rider. And I said, I want to ride bulls. And Joe Dickinson, who was in the office, it was a rainy day, said, well, hold on. And he picked up the phone and called Jeff. And 3 days later, I was on a bull.
No kidding.
Correct. Now, the problem with this, and me, I'm big. I'm 6'4", 220.
Yeah.
A good bull rider's 5'8". When you think of physics and center of gravity, right? I was insanely too big.
Right.
So I only did that for a summer, and then I transitioned over to team roping and did that for 14 years.
So it is true.
It is true.
Now we know.
Yeah.
Let's go back further, Bill.
So I was born in Greenville, South Carolina. 3 siblings, a brother, 2 sisters. I'm going to talk a lot about things that happen in your life, all of our lives that impact us. And we mentioned earlier, you have 2 choices. You can't control what happens. You can't control how you react to it and how it impacts your life. And not saying that is easy, but those are really the 2 choices.
Yes.
So my dad and I were super close up until about 7 years old, 6 or 7. I don't remember the exact date. He was involved in everything I did, scouts, football. I went to bed one night. He was there. The next morning I woke up. He wasn't, and I did not see him for 12 years.
Oh, my.
So a lot of my interest came from reading and studying different things. My love for hunting. I didn't hunt until I was 25 years old, but I read a lot of books as a kid about outdoors, being outdoors and different activities of that nature. So that, kind of shaped my life. What I was going to say earlier, I don't believe anyone is self-made. I watched a documentary with Arnold Schwarzenegger who said, I am not self-made. There have been so many people in my life that have stepped in and helped me along the way. And one of those being my brother-in-law, Milton Shockley, who's in real estate and insurance up in Greenville. He married my sister. We all went to church together, and he kind of became that father figure. And one of the questions later, but I'll go ahead and talk about it.
Sure.
The way I got into this business is so profound. So I'm on the couch, just out of high school. My brother-in-law walks in, says, get in the car, you're going to work. And keep in mind, I had no father influence or no one to guide me. And I said, where are we going? He said, you'll see. And we ended up at Young Concrete in Greenville. And that's how my concrete path started.
So that was, what year was that?
That was 77.
77.
1977. And they were in the precast business, the burial vault business. And the owner was an elder at our church.
Right.
So he really became a father figure and instilled some values in me where, as a young kid making septic tanks,
Yeah.
I would, the process, you pour the concrete in a form, and then you would level the top, put a handle in.
Yes.
But I did everything to perfection. and my coworkers would say, what are you doing that for? Nobody cares. Who cares? I said, I care. And the owner recognized that, and then we got a bonus off that later. And we needed another plant, so we bought the Stevens plant, a bigger plant, and that's how we ended up in the ready mix business. So overnight, we went from 1 truck to 20 trucks, and I remember a Christmas gift from that owner was a box of business cards.
No kidding.
It said plant manager.
With your name on it.
With my name on it.
And you were what, 18, 19?
18. And I thought that was the coolest thing that had ever happened. And there was no money value to it, but just what it represented. And so that's when it kind of clicked that if you put forth the effort, and you have to be patient, that it's going to be recognized. Somebody's going to tap you on the shoulder.
Yes.
And so that was kind of how I got started in the ready mix business. Stayed there until 85, and that's when I moved to Atlanta. Things were changing there. I was leaving the city, and an admix vendor introduced me to Williams Brothers.
What about that?
The original Horace and John Williams. And came down here and interviewed with George Campbell. Back then, you took an aptitude test, you took a current events test.
Really?
And you took a polygraph lie detector test.
Oh my.
Which is illegal now. He hired me on the spot because of my background and experience. And I said, well, I can't start for a week. I got to go back home, clean some things up. And
let me pause you real quick.
Okay.
Had you at this point, had you reconnected with your father?
No.
No. Okay.
No, that was much later.
Got it. Keep going. Sorry.
So the current events, the aptitude, kind of a speed test, the polygraph, the lie detector test was kind of weird. I remember George said, Campbell told me, he said, you're either the most honest man I've ever met or you don't have a conscience. That's what he said. So, a week later, I ended up in Atlanta. And I use the phrase sometimes, except for the grace of God, there I go.
Yes.
And William Brothers then had 5 areas. And so I could have ended up anywhere. And normally you would stay with George for a couple of weeks at headquarters and make coffee and, kind of indoctrinate you into what was going on. But they sent me to the Alpharetta plant immediately under Joe Dickinson as the plant manager and Johnny Center as the area manager.
What about that?
And I could have ended up anywhere and the path would have changed.
Yes.
Totally. So that was 1985. I'm assuming the sale of WB, the Blue Circle, which occurred in January of 86, discussions were well underway and things were going on. And as that date got closer, I started hearing, not rumblings, but conversations of Boeing Concrete being formed.
Okay.
Which opened in May of 86.
Okay. That's helpful information. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So, I saw Johnny a lot. I saw Joe every day. And they were discussions, indirectly, would I want to be involved? And I'd been with Young Concrete 7 years right out of high school, became plant manager, built the house when I was 19 years old.
Wow.
And I like stability.
Yes.
And we may talk about it later. I just met one of our new teammates, and he asked, "How long have you been here?" I said, 38 years. I think it'll work out. That's what I told him. But he said, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm just a teammate. I'm here to help." So when they started talking about Bo and leaving,
that was unnerving, I bet.
Yeah, I was super close to the centers. They were involved in plant maintenance and operations, all throughout William Brothers in different facets. And I think there's 12 of them. We don't need the exact number, but they were all going to Boeing Concrete in one concrete plant. And I said, "I don't think y'all have room for me. I'm going to stay right where I'm at."
Yes.
Because I'd been there about a year and a half at Blue Circle, and a lot of the people were staying. But I said, "No, I'm gonna stay right where I'm at. I'm not one to jump ship." And I committed to this, and so they all left and built the Lawrenceville concrete plant May of '86. And then things were kind of going a little squirrely, with the takeover and transitions and culture and how they wanted to operate. And Joe and Johnny were gone, and they started building Swanee in the fall of '87. No, the fall of '86. Swanee plant, and Stevie Center was going to be the plant manager. So they called me up and said, "We want you to be the Lithonia plant manager." They were building, just getting ready to start construction. So that's when I came on board in March of '87. Again, Boeing Concrete, March of '87. The Lithonia plant was not open. They sent me to Swanee. While they were finishing the plant, it wasn't even ready for me to go down there and help set up the office.
Right.
And things of that nature. And some things went down and whatever, and I ended up being the plant manager at Swanee. Started March of '87.
That's the year. That's the month that March of '87. Okay, I'm tracking with you now. Keep going. Keep going.
So I was back, working for Joe Dickinson, area manager, and Johnny Center, president of Boeing Concrete. And tough times. We say tough. It's just all we knew back then. We didn't have hours of service.
That's right.
We worked 6 14-hour days a week. Saturday, was just another work day. And without the hours of service, you'd come in at 2 and go home at 10. And
right.
That's good. We call our drivers here, and I like it, concrete delivery professionals, CDP.
Yes.
But you'd, send people home at 8, 9 o'clock at night and say, go get a few hours and be back at 2. And we were safe for the most part. And I'm glad it's not that way now. The hours of service are important.
Yes.
Work-life balance. There's still a sacrificial element to being successful. And then you have to prioritize your life, your hobbies, and with your family and work. I mean, you can make it work. But it was some real good times back then. And then somewhere in the mid '80s, Thomas Concrete from Gothenburg, Sweden, came to the United States. They came to Miami first and bought Continental, I think. And then they, Woody Bowen is one of our environmental guys on our team here.
Yeah.
So I just spent a lot of time with him, and we were reminiscing about Bowen and selling to Thomas and how some of that was coordinated. But they had heard that there was some businesses up here available, so they came to Atlanta. And I'm not sure which is first. They were very close in time, but they bought Wilson and Sons,
Yes.
which was in Woodstock, a family business, Powder Springs, Lithia Springs. And then they bought Ben Hill Concrete, which was where with Ben Hill, they were in Cumming, they were in Lithonia. And so those two companies became Thomas in Atlanta. And then early 90s, it's funny, Joe said, which I tried to keep a tidy ship, a clean plant, but he said, we got some visitors coming. You know the deal. Let's, get everything cleaned up. And so that occurred. And next thing I know, had been sold to Thomas Concrete.
What year was that? Maybe 89?
89-ish.
Yeah,
yes.
89. And at that time, was Johnny the general manager, or
He was president of Bowen. So
okay,
you had Bowen Concrete, Johnny president. You had Charlie Rice, Ben Hill,
yes,
that was running the operation for Thomas in Atlanta, and the Wilson and Son, the Wilson brothers, they left.
yes.
So for about 6 to 8 months, we operated as Ben Hill Bowen. It's separate companies, and we took the Cumming plant that they had. We didn't have one. They took the Lithonia plant, and you got separate paychecks. The Ben Hill side, which was predominantly on the south, and the Bowen side on the north side. So that went on for about 6 to 8 months. And so Johnny ran the Bowen side. The Ben Hill was Charlie. I'm not sure if I'd even met the Thomases yet. So shortly after that was not probably ideal. We became one company, and it was determined that Johnny Center would run everything. And I think Charlie retired, moved on, and so we had some continuity then, some direction
Right.
and structure. We were one company. And that was the early 90s.
And Joe D., what was his role in those early days?
He was area operations manager.
Yeah.
And ultimately became chief operating officer. So my career at that time, I was a plant manager at Swanee, a big plant, 35 trucks.
Wow.
Give or take.
Yes.
And back then you would be all over Atlanta. I mean, you would be in Marietta, you'd be at the Turner Field, you'd be in Conyers, all out of Swanee. And now today you can't even go
you couldn't. Right.
You can't go 5 miles
No.
without timing out the load of concrete. So I was extremely driven to I've got a saying I'll bring up later. I'll say it now, that how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yes.
And anything worth doing is worth overdoing. If you're going to put forth the effort. So in life now, think about my childhood and my dad, they're going to be setbacks, and you have to deal with that. And you have two choices, remember. So before we had merged with Ben Hill, Johnny said, Joe's going to need some help, another area manager, because of our growth, and it's going to be one of y'all. And when the time came for that to happen, I was the only one still on the team. And who the others were doesn't matter.
Right.
But then we merge. And it's Ben Hill and Bowen, and Johnny's running everything. So I wonder how the Ben Hill people felt now that their guy was gone. So he promoted one of the Ben Hill plant managers to area manager. Did it pretty quick. Johnny wasn't, he was a man of few words.
Right.
there wasn't an interview process or a posting or who wants to do this. Boom, it was just done. And just out of the blue, he brought it up in a meeting, plant managers meeting, and a lot of us went like, "What?" So that was kind of a setback. I get it. Two companies coming together. The one guy's going to run everything from the Bowen side, and then the Ben Hill guys. He wanted to keep them at ease and not worried. So promoted one of their guys, and I will say at that time, timing's everything. Young Concrete was growing. My brother-in-law had bought into the company in Greenville. They reached out to me and asked me to come back to Greenville.
No kidding.
Now, at that time, I was married. So, 87, I got married here in Atlanta. Colette, who became my son's mother, she was from New Jersey. We had a lot of fun, just super tight, super close. And so when Young reached back out to me, we were married. So they wanted me to come back to Greenville.
And your brother-in-law's there.
Yeah.
Right.
And they were going to give me a signing bonus of a big piece of property. He was a realtor too. And I actually gave Joe and Johnny notice.
No kidding.
Yes, sir. And if you look at you look into the future, none of us have that crystal ball.
What do you think was at that moment, what was the attraction for going back to Young? You remember?
One, the piece of property.
Yeah.
Sort of going back home.
Yeah.
But my wife, I said, was from Jersey, and her family was here. And there'll be another story like this in a minute down the road. And we just, sometimes it's probably not the best way to do it. But sometimes until you make that commitment or say you're going to do it, then it sinks in. So they brought my replacement to Swanee. And so I'm indoctrinating him into the plant and the way it works and all that stuff, the processes and whatnot. And went home maybe Tuesday night. My wife and I chatted, and we're not leaving.
No kidding.
So Wednesday morning,
oh boy,
I pick up the phone. Johnny, can I stay? And he said, well, hell yeah. And he said, put the other guy on the phone. Let me talk to him. And it was that quick. He got on the phone with the other guy that was going to replace me. He went back to his old plant. And Johnny was tough. He said, I kind of know what you were thinking. We merged with Ben Hill. I'm running everything. I promote that other guy from Ben Hill. I kind of know what you were thinking. But he said, I can't promise you nothing.
Right.
I'll give you your plant manager job back. That's it. I can't promise you a thing. I said, fair enough. And never left, which was kind of pivotal because they ended up selling to Cemex down the road. So when you look at the roads, the crossroads,
yes,
how things might have ended up, you have no idea. But shortly after, I was promoted to area operations manager. I'd spent my whole life in operations, building plants, putting up plants, hauling concrete tankers, sand, rock, running loaders, whatever it took at a smaller scale. So it was, and that's where I cut my teeth. So then if you fast forward a bit to a lot of growth, a lot of greenfielding, some acquisitions. Thomas went to Raleigh, then came down to Charlotte, then upstate Greenville, and we can get more into that later. But a lot of growth here, which let me think. Canton Cartersville Ready Mix was a purchase. Masters Concrete was a purchase. I think you just had
Tim Christian.
Tim on the
Yeah.
podcast a while back. Phillips Concrete, which was Stockbridge in Fayetteville. Cannon up in Cleveland. Just a lot of growth and some greenfield that I was fortunate to be part of as an area operations manager. So if you fast forward to 2004, you know, we've kind of hit our stride.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we're 25% of the market, and you've got the other two big guys, and things are pretty good. And well, even before that, let me back up a bit. Joe asked me to go to Raleigh, Joe and Johnny, to be the GM up there. And I learned my lesson from the first time. I never committed, and ultimately said, we don't want to live in Raleigh.
Right.
And if it hurts me, so be it.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
we don't want to go, you know. If you back up to the first decision, our family's here. Greenville's not but a couple hours away. All my wife's family's here. So, you know, for that reason, I'll stay in Atlanta and do what I'm doing. And if something opens up, good. If it doesn't, I understand. 2004, back to that, Joe came to me again and asked me to be VP of sales with a 45 plus sales team, a lot of volume, a lot of plants, and had never been a plant sales, commercial sales, anything. But I always had a attraction to the customer side as a plant manager.
Yeah.
And I made it a point then, once a week, I would be with my salesman, whether it was Terry Gibson or Tony Cape at one time, even Tip Cape, going way back, that I took, you know, personal pride in it being my plant, and without customers, we had nothing. And so I wanted to make sure that I spent time and met customers. And once a week, I would get out and meet customers and ask them what they need. What do they want? What can we do better? What can we do different? Thank them for the business. Don't ever assume that they have to call you. They don't. And so, yeah, I had that attraction to the customer side.
Yes.
And I think Joe's motivation in 04 was maybe some more structure to the sales team. Yes, you had some processes you had out for bid, and then that would either be lost or sold and create your backlog. But there was not a lot of accountability. So I knew if we had to do X amount of yards a year, someone had to be responsible for it. And you know, in operations, Bill, we get measured 3 ways from Sunday.
Yes.
Yards per hour,
Yes.
gap time,
Yes.
yards per truck, yards per driver, all of it. And so I took our sales budget and allocated that per sales individual. So if we're going to do X amount of yards next year, somebody's responsible for every yard of that concrete. And we tracked it weekly. And they weren't really used to that, but I said it made sense, and I explained why we were doing it. So, yeah, that was invaluable experience.
Oh gosh, yes.
And then, you know, I helped or was part of a small part of creating our CRM, customer relationship management tool. You know, how to manage that and work through that, and probably mission one was to, I don't want to say rekindle, but to bring the sales team and the operations team, because we know they can butt heads.
Yes.
and to bring them together and understand each other's role and importance of that role and to respect one another. And we had a guy on our team that year, commercial sales. He played on Clemson's national championship team in 1980, Reed Engel. And so I said, Joe, can I have a meeting? And I brought everybody, credit, tech service, sales, ops. And it was a very good meeting, productive. But I took Clemson's national championship year, and we looked at every single game, and we looked at the score. We kept it simple. One game was 6-0, 2 field goals. So the defense really stepped up. The offense couldn't do anything, and the special teams won that game for it. And then one game it was 34-0, and the offense rolled, and the defense just getting them to understand it takes all aspects of the business.
That's good. That's really good.
And the way you garner respect, you know, I'm going to say sales was kind of, you know, they played golf and they went on trips and they did this. And no, that's not all they do. And some of that is very important. But when the plant needs you, you have to be available and you have to communicate and work together. And you've got a question later, you know, what do customers want? I learned early that, and this is the respect thing, if I'm selling you concrete billet and it's supposed to be there at 10, I know at 8 o'clock whether it's going to be there.
Right.
I know. And this is my pet peeve today. And I'm going to call you at 8 o'clock. And you may not like it, but I'm going to give you honest information. I'm probably going to undersell, over deliver. And then I'm going to call your salesperson, because he's part of that team. Because if I don't call you, you're going to call him, and you're going to say, like, what the, and he's going to be, everybody's going to be mad. So and I demanded that we do that. Let you know, the customer know that we're not going to be there when we said. This is why. That's not always important, but that way, because they're realists, they understand, they have problems. They can go set up another driveway, they can take a break, go to lunch. But calling that salesperson, that makes him feel part of the team. And then he's not going to get a surprise phone call from you. So it was really about creating respect among every department and working together and understanding the value that the sales team brought, the tech service team, the AP, the AR, the collections, the operations, every aspect of it.
So how long were you in that role, Bill, before the bottom fell out with the Great Recession?
Yeah, so 04 was good, 5 was good, 6 and 7 very good, and then so 4 years.
Yeah, you had 4 years to.
Yeah, and 06 was our best year. 07
right,
kind of flat, and then
downhill.
We just didn't know how bad it was going to be.
No. And I'm curious to hear some of your thoughts. I'm always curious to hear about how, you know, some of the ways that, going back to your mantra or whatever you want to call it, but the idea that, you know, you can't control what happens to you, but you can always, you've got a huge amount of influence on how you're going to respond to it. Right. So there you are, and the concrete volumes are just plummeting in Atlanta. And how did you guys respond, and how did you survive in, you know, such a dramatic downturn? What are some of the things that stand out for you when you look back on surviving that and coming through it?
Well, the very first thing, you have to be aware of the problem, the situation, but you can't let it consume you. You have to be solution-based focused and start doing incrementally little things, because there's not one big thing going to fix it. And that's what a lot of people in sales, they want to sell the big 100,000-yard job instead of a bunch of little jobs. And you have to react. You have to be swift and agile and quick. And there, again, there's not just one big thing you can do, one magic wand. You know, I'd say probably, let me back up first, because we could have done a lot of things, but without Mr. Thomas, Jan Thomas's commitment to being here, being in the business, where he could have easily gone a numerous different routes.
Right.
You know, I've got my businesses in Sweden and Germany and Poland, and at the time Norway. You know, I'm just going to sit this one out. But his commitment to what we're doing over here, first and foremost. Second, to have that commitment, he had a belief in us, the senior leadership team, which I think was super critical. And he communicated that. So then we just looked at the plant network first. Where could we reduce cost? And there was a certain amount of attrition anyway,
Right.
that would naturally occur. So we consolidated plants without impacting our service area. Maybe we would have to go further, but you would consolidate, so you reduce some plant costs. But what you couldn't, when I'm trying to think what Atlanta went from 12 million yards to
to 3.
3.
Yeah. And from in 11, as you've heard me say repeatedly, that was the bottom, 3 million yards in 2011.
And we, 80% of our fleet.
Unbelievable. Let me ask you this real quick before I forget. I hadn't thought about this before, but what's your recollection of the rest of the Thomas footprint over in Scandinavia and Europe? Did the other parts of the business, did they drop?
Yes.
I mean, it was bad there too.
Yeah, it was global for sure.
Got you.
But yeah, and then it got to where the attrition was not enough.
Right.
The organic attrition.
Right.
And then, tough decisions had to be made. And, from payroll to freezing everything.
Yes.
Some stuff going backwards. And, but again, we just looked at it as a storm that we were facing, and we leaned into the wind and buckled down and cut costs and worked harder, worked longer.
Yes.
And knew that there'd be a light at the end of the tunnel. Didn't know it'd be 4 years, but.
Oh, I know. I can remember in 2010.
It became the new norm for sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was a slow recovery, and as you know, we're still only, we're maybe pacing in the 7.5 to 8 million yard range now.
Yeah.
It's so hard to believe. It's so hard to imagine that we're still, round numbers, 4 million yards or so off that peak.
There was some, personally, there was some other stuff going on. So June of 2012, and prior to that, there was plans that Mr. Thomas would retire from actively running the business. And June of 2012, we met Hans Carlander. I remember he came to Atlanta. We had dinner at Canoe. And we had the German team here, the Polish team, and the Swedish team here in town. And, that was sort of refreshing. He came from the auto industry and the paper industry, pulp, and very process driven. To this day, we still do the MTB, manage the business, which is always around business improvement activities with an activity and a dollar value assigned to it, either plus or negative, to take away or to add revenue. And that was refreshing, and we had a glimmer of hope that things were turning and getting better. Now from 2009 to 12, personally, my wife fell in 09 we were going to my son's World Series baseball game, and she got very sick over the course of the years, and she passed away December 11th, 2013. My son was the 8th grader.
Wow.
So about a 4-year illness.
Wow.
2011, I enrolled in grad school as a 50-something-year-old. And I chose Mercer because it was in-person classes and it was smaller classes. I looked at Emory, I looked at Georgia, I looked at Georgia Tech. And kind of what's unique about that, I don't have an undergrad degree. So if you go back to getting out of high school, my brother-in-law saying, come on, you're going to work.
Right.
We didn't have the funds or money to go to school.
Yes.
And I learned that 95% of the schools, the business schools, will accept people without an undergrad degree if they pass the GMAT and then the interview process and whatnot. So between 11 and 12, that's what I was doing. And I remember the dean of the program, Facisks at Mercer, said, before this is over, your job and your family will wonder why in the hell you're doing this. And I remember being with Johnny at times traveling, going to Raleigh and Charlotte, and he'd say, we need to go, and I can't. And he would get all frustrated, but he knew the deal. I said, I got class. So
what do you think was of that program? I'm sure you learned a lot. I can only imagine, but is there anything in particular that you look back on that and you think that was really, really, really valuable to you? I'm sure there were many things, but
yeah, the first thing comes to mind, during the program, you had to have a B average to pass, and I think I was 3.75 when it was all said and done. But you could only make 2 C's the entire program, and I did it the first semester.
You did it immediately.
I got it out of the way. One was finance, and one was business law. And just getting used to that grind and not having the undergrad experience.
Yes.
Of being in front of professors. Really the teamwork.
Yes.
Because it was an executive MBA, so I worked with some great people and some great teams. I was a team leader, but just did some great projects. It had a global influence, so we were able to we spent 10 days in Argentina and Santiago, Chile, and we went to 3 or 4 businesses a day to learn how things worked and operated. Of course, we had to write papers on all that. Then we went to New York City and went to the stock exchange, and went to the Federal Reserve Bank, and I sat where Bernanke sat, and I remember reading a quote that he said the slowdown at the time in the housing industry would be healthy for the country. So yeah, that was quite the experience. And you're just learning to persevere because I had a job. My wife was sick. And,
Yes.
staying up to 2, 3 in the morning writing papers because they didn't care. I mean, the work had to be done.
No. Now, when did Alan Wessel come on the scene? Say a little bit about that. What year was that Alan came to Thomas?
So when Hans got here, June of 12,
Yeah.
Alan was not here.
Right.
Johnny was approaching retirement and had some health issues. And so he left later that year. And then there was a search, and Alan came on board August of 13. I met him in Raleigh at the airport.
So you never had met him before,
No.
I presume, right?
No, and really
Because he was out on the West Coast with Vulcan.
Yeah, and really it only had Johnny because Joe, I skipped a part. Joe left in 07.
Right, that's right.
I think it was 07. And again, back to just doing your job, doing the best you can. I remember Scott Center and I talking about all the possibilities of who would come in here and be the GM. Throwing out, and not once did we think of ourselves. And then Johnny calls me one day, I want you to be the GM. I'm like, what? And so many people worry about becoming something else. And I said, that's great, but just worry about what you're supposed to be doing and be the best you can be. And one day somebody will tap you on the shoulder.
That's a great point, Bill.
I promise.
That's a great point.
So, but Alan shows up August, and he brought because we were not pretty. We were entrenched in working with Johnny, and he came from Horace Williams, and just all those little measurements and things you did and tools, and there was no deviation.
Yeah.
So he opened our eyes to thinking about other possibilities and other ways of working and team engagement and soliciting other ideas and more collaboration, which was, early on it was a little friction, but another thing I would say to young people, you have to adapt.
Yeah.
And embrace the change. And we use the term to embrace the pace. But you have to adapt. And, all right, this is a smart guy. He's led the business unit out west and done a lot of great things, M&A, acquisitions, super smart. Very personable. And if he likes you, he's going to poke fun at you all the time.
Right.
But that's kind of rare with, I think some CEOs, he's got a big personality. He likes to have fun and cut up and work hard. And so, all right, Johnny's not here. He's here. Let's embrace what we're doing and move forward and grow. And we've done a lot of great things since he got here. And it's hard to believe it's been 11 years.
That is hard to believe. Just like that.
And we've done a lot of greenfields, acquisitions, growth. He's open to any and every possibility that, bring him a business case and present all the facts. And it's been a joy, been a pleasure.
I had a question I don't want to miss. And you've touched on many of the questions I had for you. You certainly answered the bull rider question that was looming out there. So and you touched on this early on, and I wanted to come back to it just for a moment, but in what ways do you think the expectations of ready mix customers have they changed much through the Great Recession? And from your point of view, or is it still fundamentally the same basic needs that the customers, the people who are buying ready-mix concrete from Thomas and others. Any thoughts on that? Anything?
Oh yeah. One of the questions that we hadn't touched on, what do you enjoy most about the industry?
Yes.
Is it is so local. You cannot import concrete. You cannot export it. You cannot put it on a shelf. It's a perishable product. And not most of my best friends, grown men that I say I love you to, are either vendors, and I call vendors partners. Vendors, they're partners in our success, and customers. And if you look back 37 years, we were all kids. So I've been to weddings, I've been to parties, birthday parties, anniversary parties, a few funerals. But that's the number one, how local it is. So with that said, as the customer base has changed. You know, you remember back in the day, John Whelan, Jim Hogan, Bill Grant, Tony Brown, Rudy Brown, Kevin Porsche, all these local builders that were always in the neighborhood. And we valued the importance of that market segment as a foundation, everyday concrete, versus commercial that can have ebb and flows.
Right.
As the jobs finish and start. And then with those builders, you had the wall contractors and the footing contractors. And so the customer base has changed as you transition from that to the production builder. You have to adapt to their way of doing things. But fundamentally, not much has changed.
No.
There's different ways to place orders. There's online orders. There's call centers. There's central dispatch. And this goes back to my tenure in sales, but customers want brutal honesty.
Yes.
To make informed decisions.
Yes.
Because they're in the same industry and they have problems and they have to change, and this doesn't work out or go as planned, just like we do. And it's foolish, like going back to, if I'm not going to be on a job at 10 o'clock, I know it at 8. If you know it.
You know it.
If you know what you're doing, you know it. And just being able to communicate to them, communicate to your salesperson. This is what's happened. This is when I can be there. There's not going to be a cold joint. We're going to, once we start you, we will service you. And then respond to problems. Own it. If you mess up, you got to own it. And not beat around the bush, not BS, try to talk your way out of it. Just own it. And we've cemented, no pun intended, our reputation by, you don't want to have a lot of problems or quality issues, but when you do, address it, determine what it is, find a solution, and move on. And people are like, wow, thank you. And you just, it's kind of cliche, but, just, you hear this all the time. Customers will talk about, dispatchers being liars, or they just say this or that.
Yeah.
Some of it's lack of knowledge, but just be honest. And I've had to call some of the biggest dogs in Atlanta and say, I know you ordered 120 yards an hour. And how could you even approach the next day knowing you're not going to be at 120 without telling him? But it happens. And, Brassfield Gory, hey, I know what you want. This is what we can do. And this is why, if you need to know. But
yes. And
I've let your concrete placer know. And he said, great, thank you. I'll save some in and send them somewhere else.
Right.
And everything's, it's so simple.
It sounds simple, doesn't it? And it is on one hand.
It is.
But people want to dodge that candor, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen that for years.
We are part of the ISO organization, both quality and environmental, and we were doing it. And so with that, it's a third-party organization. You have a list of SOPs, but
Oh yeah,
they're your SOPs.
they're your SOPs. Just
and
follow them.
You can take them out, change, adapt. We don't use order cards anymore, and it's really about. And we were doing those things long before we decided to be part of ISO and
Right.
have that third-party audit. And I tell these young folks, the number one word I use is less chaos. If you do these little things, take care of your plant, your trucks, communicate to your customers. If you mess a load up, don't try to doctor it up or just, don't make a bigger problem bigger. Your day will be simple. I tell these young guys too now, to me, when I figured it out, running Swanee concrete plant, 35 trucks, toward the end of my tenure being a plant manager is the easiest job I ever did. I was there every single day. I saw everything. I met with my shop foreman. I met with plant maintenance, QC, tech service.
You concentrated on what was right in front of you, didn't you, Bill?
Now it gets harder as you become a production manager area
Right.
where you're going from plant to plant and you're not there every day. And then you're trying to instill a culture, a way of working, which is important. But yeah, it was.
Let me change gears on you just a little bit and ask you a question that I always like to hear. I like to understand what you see as the value of the association, the GRMCA. What's the benefit to Thomas Concrete, to Bill Davis, to members? What do they gain from being part of our association, would you say? What stands out?
Well, what stands out now is you leading the organization.
Oh, well, thank you.
And I'm serious.
Thank you.
We have a lot of similar interests, but and you, I guess you retired or semi-retired, and so you wouldn't do this if you didn't want to do it. And you bring a lot of passion to the association, and you met my buddy Chris. So your passion is contagious. So we get back from Ponte Vedra this last convention, and I called Chris Buffington with Taylor Transport, who's one of the big haulers in Atlanta, cement, rock, sand, gravel. And I said, man, Chris, Ricky, y'all were the only ones not there. You need to get involved.
And they did.
And they did. And then you put Chris on the committee.
Put him right on, and he jumped in and had a lot to offer.
Yeah. So your passion's contagious, and I don't remember the year, but I was on the board 2 terms, whatever the term limit is. And at that time, we did the sales tax on the mixture.
Yes.
We were involved in that. The DOT load going from 8 to whatever the legal load is, things of that nature. And just networking with other folks in the industry. We don't have to hate each other.
No.
No. A lot of good friends in the industry. You mentioned how this podcast sort of got started. I was recently back in April on a fishing trip with Scott Morgan and Basic
Tony
Cantrell, and we were just nonstop talking about.
It's a remarkable family.
Yes.
I mean, it's just almost hard to, unless you've been in the middle of it, it's hard to really imagine that it's business. And you're right, you don't have to hate each other. I mean, there's a lot of, you're a competitive guy. But you and I, over the years when we worked together in the association, and we were on the board at the same time, but I mean, I had the utmost of respect for you, and there's just so many wonderful people that push it. I mean, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, we all push it. And I think, as you know, what we're concentrating on is at the association is help our members be safe, be compliant, and be prosperous. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's our mantra. So, anything else come to mind?
The industry as a whole, we get to create things. And the old story, you can be a bricklayer. I'm a bricklayer, or I build cathedrals. But just driving through Atlanta, and
Yes.
I remember probably the first major project that comes to mind, 400, which, the GDOT just had the letting for the 400 express lanes. But I produced all the barrier concrete from 285 to when 400 was a 4-lane with a grass median. And, and when you go out of town and people talk about Atlanta and traffic and growth and, oh, I'm in that industry, you can talk about different things and what's going on and what it means and what it looks like. And that's pretty cool too.
It really is.
But no, we've got a great association. There's the social aspect. There's the fundraising to help different organizations help kids promote the industry, to captivate an audience, to generate where people, young kids, may want to come and be part of the industry. My son's in the industry on the mining side, so yeah, there's a lot of great benefits. And again, just having you on board and the team you built, we're getting a lot of stuff done.
Well, thank you, Bill. I tell you, as always, these visits go by too quick,
Oh, yeah.
and I have so many more questions, but we've run out of time for today. And I do like to hear, you talk about advice that you give young people, and you've been sharing that with us throughout our talk this morning about how you counsel young people. And you told me before we began that may be one of the most gratifying aspects of your life today is your ability. Before we sign off, take just the last few moments and talk about how you counsel and guide people that you're leading today in the company. Just any closing thoughts on that?
Sure, love to. There's a joke around here that I'm not going to retire. And maybe it's not a joke, because I believe you have to have a purpose in life. And you can have many legacies, I think, and being in the industry and being with Thomas is certainly one. Probably the most important, given my background, was to be the best father I could be. And I think I've accomplished that. At the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I want my son to say, opposite of what I had, you killed it, you rocked it. Tough love, life lessons. So I'm into fitness, and everybody who knows me knows that. And so one thing I share with our younger teammates coming into the business: discipline over motivation. Motivation means when you're motivated to do something. Now, you can have a motivation to I want to be in the sales department or op, but discipline means you're going to do it regardless because you have to. And that's important. And then you can't control what happens. You can't control how you react to it. I can't believe I've not mentioned Nick Saban or Kirby Smart, because I am a huge football fan, and it's the greatest team sport there is, I think, with many components. So one of these, I think this was Kirby. Losers do very little and wonder why they lose. Champions work their butt off and are worried, what else can I be doing? And that's that sacrificial element that yeah, work-life balance is important, but there's still that. And then you prioritize your time in your life. 3, if I'm in order, being self-aware.
Yes.
You don't need to sit back and I don't need to wait on Alan to tell me I need to do this or look at things that way or that way. Be self-aware, look in the mirror. There's so much literature. There's so much information out there. There's so many books. Leaders Eat Last, Eat the Frog. Just tons of books that you can gain knowledge from.
Well, and it certainly sounds to me like the culture that's been created here at Thomas over time is certainly a culture that is conducive to winning. It's conducive to discipline. It's valued. It's appreciated. That's my impression as I engage you and your colleagues, which I do on our committees all the time. I'm engaging Thomas personnel, and you see that. You know, can I put it into precise verbiage? Not necessarily, but I can notice that there is a genuine commitment to excellence and discipline and doing what's right in front of you and doing it very well. So, well, Bill, we could go on and we'll loop back around one day, but I'm so grateful for your time and certainly for the friendship. We've been together a long time.
Yes.
And I really do appreciate you, my friend.
Definitely. Thank you, Bill.
Take care.